Well, with us this morning to review the papers is National World City's Editor-in-Chief, Nancy Fielder, as well as broadcaster Pete Price. Well, let's take a look at the front pages. Stay with us, guys, because Dominic Raab is, of course, dominating, and his resignations is on at least all of them. But let's take a look at how the papers are reporting it. Well, Dominic Raab quits in fury. That's the lead for The Guardian after the Deputy Prime Minister resigned. Now, The Times says Mr. Raab went down swinging in the face of what he says was a tyranny of subjective hurt feelings. Well, The Eye, meanwhile, says the civil servants who worked under him were angry at what they call his tone-deaf resignation. And Bully Beef reads the front page of the Daily Mirror, calling his behaviour sickening. But not all the papers are critical. Well, the Express quotes allies of Mr. Raab saying he was forced out for just wanting the best for Britain. And then the Telegraph reporting in the end it was a row over a plan to put Spanish forces on the ground in Gibraltar during Brexit negotiations that actually scuppered Mr. Raab. And the Mail ask if this was the day the country became ungovernable, when a top cabinet minister was forced to quit for hurting the feelings of civil servants. Well, in other news, the growing troubles at the CBI lead the Financial Times, with several major companies quitting the organisation after new allegations of serious misconduct. And then the Star returns to an old favourite, the weather, with a prediction of Arctic winds to come following a mini heatwave. Oh dear. Let's bring in Nancy and Peter. Thanks for joining us. Great to have you on this morning for Sky News Breakfast. Nancy, should we start with you and The Guardian? Because they're reporting he's out, but he went out fighting, and he wasn't happy with the process.
Well, it doesn't seem like he's happy with much, does it? I mean, he's sent a stinging resignation letter, which seems to be becoming a habit in the Conservative Party. They kind of go, but they go down saying, actually, perhaps it wasn't my fault, and highlighting everybody else's issues. I mean, he's gone down acting quite like a bully, to be honest, which is ironic considering that's what he's fallen on his sword for. But he's absolutely livid, as if it really isn't his fault. He might have, doesn't really even admit stepping over the line. He sort of highlights everything that was wrong against him, and doesn't really admit to doing much wrong himself. It's very interesting. The political divide amongst the newspapers, as you said, interpret it completely differently this morning. But he's gone. He's very angry, just as angry as he was when he was presumably found guilty of bullying during the two incidents that were investigated, although there were lots of other incidents investigated where it was cleared. It's a very mixed-up story from the two sides this morning.
Indeed. Two accounts of bullying were upheld by this inquiry. But, Pete, if we turn our attentions to the Express, they're going down the line of that he was only trying to do the best for Britain, and perhaps, one person's bullying is another person's robust leadership, perhaps.
It is a minefield, and good morning, ladies. I'm beside myself with all the different stories. First of all, what is the definition of bullying? All the papers seem to have a different idea on what bullying's all about. I think the whole of this story opens a bigger picture about politics and bullying in the workplace, because this man, love or hate him, and I'm no fan of his, but he's trying to run a country. He is going to, because of this story, put off an awful lot of people that want to go into politics. What bothers me about it is, in broadcasting, in journalism, the civil servants would last 3 minutes because they would get bullied and shouted at all the time. We're living in a world now that is getting so woke and so stupid that nobody can say a word or say anything out of place. And this is looking at the whole of the thing, forced out, wanting the best for Britain. He's running or trying to run or help to run a country. And I just wonder if the civil servants are now getting into the situation where they want to run the country. So maybe we should get rid of the politics and the politicians and let them run the country. I think it's getting out of hand. They said he was intimidating, abrasive, and humiliating. That's the real world, where we work in. all people listening now will have been bullied, if you want to use the word bullied, at work, will have had problems at work. I've had problems all my life at work, but that's why I am where I am today, and I do my job. I think we're getting too mamdy-pamdy. I'm sorry, but I'm not a fan of this man, so I'm not saying it's because of him.
Okay. Well, I suppose what it does do, doesn't it, Nancy, is that it opens up a really valid conversation, doesn't it, about behaviour in the workplace and what's acceptable in 2023. But in the Telegraph, their line is that actually the downfall of Dominic Raab was actually that row over Spanish forces in Gibraltar during Brexit.
That's right. So he's saying he was effectively defending the country. He was defending the government's line. Obviously, the government is elected. He's not elected. He said it's alleged that he said Spanish soldiers, Spanish boots will be allowed on the ground in Gibraltar when the government line was they wouldn't be. Now, if that is absolutely 100% true, and I'm happy to take that at face value, that's fine. But if you can't lead without bullying, without intimidating, without making people feel scared, you're not a leader. He's in the wrong job. And I accept absolutely what Pete says, that we've all been through it. But I don't think any of us want to go through it. And I think we should be able to find people who can lead the country in a way we would want to be treated. Managers don't have to, maybe things haven't changed in broadcast as much as they have in print, because back in the day, editors would throw things at your head if you got a typo in a newspaper. We're in a different world. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think we can sit here and defend bullying, which is what a lot of the newspapers are doing this morning. He did wrong. He's got to go. He's not a good leader if this is what he has to resort to get the best out of people.
Interesting, Pete, because people do deserve to go to work in peace, don't they, and be inspired. But the Mail is saying, actually, this was the day Britain became ungovernable. Thoughts briefly?
Well, yeah, because you are running a country. We've just had a pandemic. People have got a totally different outlook on life now because of the pandemic. It's a different world we're living in, and we're going to try and get back on track. So if he hasn't got the chance of running the country because he's too busy worrying about how he says what he says. But listen, I've been bullied and I hated it. You know, we never had HR in my day when we first started. It didn't exist. Now you've got HR, and people go to it all the time. I remember when our HR first started, I shouted, I said something to my producer, but my boss said, "Have you just said something to him?" I went, "Yeah, you better go and apologise. He's been to HR." That was my first experience of, oh my word, mine's not bullying, mine's passion, which I'm doing now.
Okay,
and
Pete.
maybe Rob is
We've
doing
got
the same.
so much more to talk about, haven't we? One person's bullying, another's robust leadership. We'll have so much more to talk about. But for now, Pete and Nancy, thank you so much for your input into those front pages. Okay, still to come on Sky News Breakfast. Former Deputy Prime Minister Dominic Raab accused what he calls activists and civil services forcing him out of office.